Meera Sharma never imagined her dream wedding in Dubai would end in death, and Sameer Al-Mansoor never expected the woman he loved to become the victim of his own mother's deadly secret. What began as a celebration of love between two families from different worlds turned into one of the most chilling tragedies the city had ever seen. Beneath the glittering chandeliers and golden luxury, a glass of poisoned wine waited, and by the end of the night, the bride would be gone, leaving behind a trail of lies, betrayal, and an unimaginable family conspiracy. Meera Kapoor's life had always been about patience and dreams. Growing up in a small Mumbai apartment with her widowed mother, she had learned early that nothing came easy. She worked hard, earned a degree in interior design, and spent her 20s building a modest career decorating high-end apartments for clients she could only dream of being. When she met Sameer Al-Mansoor at a luxury design exhibition in Dubai, it felt like a door opening to a life she never thought possible. Sameer was confident, polished, and impossibly charming. He was the kind of man people noticed the moment he entered a room, tall.com, and surrounded by quiet power. His family owned several construction companies across the UAE, and his reputation as a generous businessman made him respected in elite circles. Their connection was instant. What began as professional conversation quickly turned into late-night phone calls, shared laughter, and the growing illusion of love. Meera's mother was hesitant at first, worried about the differences in culture, faith, and status. But Sameer's warmth seemed genuine. He visited Mumbai, treated her family with kindness, and promised that his intentions were pure. Within 6 months, he proposed, and Meera said yes with trembling hands and hopeful eyes. Their wedding was planned with precision and grandeur, combining both Indian vibrance and Arab luxury. The venue was a 5-star resort by the Dubai shoreline, chosen for its breathtaking ocean view and exclusivity. Guests flew in from around the world, business partners, socialites, and distant relatives, all eager to witness the union of love and wealth. The air buzzed with celebration, and Meera, wrapped in a golden sari that shimmered under the lights, looked every bit the fairy tale bride. She couldn't stop smiling as photographers captured her every step, her heart pounding with both excitement and disbelief that this was her life now. Sameer was the perfect groom, attentive, proud, and endlessly affectionate. He couldn't take his eyes off her as they exchanged vows beneath the crystal chandeliers. Their love seemed flawless, the kind that could survive anything. But behind the curtain of glitter and laughter, tension silently brewed. Sameer's mother, Layla Al-Mansoor, was composed but distant. Her smile appeared fixed, her eyes calculating. She had agreed to the marriage, but only because Sameer's determination left her no choice. In her world, appearances were everything, and she believed her son's marriage should have elevated their family status, not attached them to a girl from a modest Indian background. Throughout the ceremony, Layla's presence loomed quietly, her disapproval hidden beneath polite gestures. She congratulated Meera, posed for photos, and exchanged pleasantries with guests. But her mind was elsewhere. Her instincts told her that Meera wasn't as simple as she appeared. Layla's connections reached deep into Dubai's elite society, and she had already instructed a private investigator to look into her future daughter-in-law's past. Every whispered conversation, every discreet glance, was part of a plan forming inside her head. Meera, oblivious to this brewing hostility, believed she was finally stepping into happiness. She noticed Layla's coldness but chose to interpret it as cultural difference or first meeting awkwardness. As the evening continued, she was surrounded by music, lights, and endless congratulations. The crowd cheered as the couple shared their first dance, the floor sparkling beneath them. Yet somewhere inside her, a strange unease flickered, a faint sense that not everyone in that room wished her well. When the fireworks lit up the night sky, Meera stood beside Sameer, holding his hand tightly as cheers echoed from the beach below. To her it was a perfect ending to a perfect day. But as the embers of light faded, so did her peace. From across the room, Layla watched them silently, her face unreadable under the golden glow. To the guests, she was the picture of elegance. But in her heart, a storm was already gathering. The wedding may have united two families, but it also planted the first seed of tragedy, one that would bloom sooner than anyone could have imagined. 2 days before the wedding, Meera had woken up to a faint feeling of nausea. At first, she brushed it off as stress from the upcoming ceremony. The endless fittings, rehearsals, and attention had left her exhausted. But when the dizziness persisted, she decided to take a test in secret. Standing in the small bathroom of her Dubai hotel suite, her hands trembled as 2 lines slowly appeared on the strip. Meera froze, her heart racing. She was pregnant. For a long moment, she simply stared at the result, unsure whether to smile or panic. This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life, yet the timing of the news filled her with dread. She loved Sameer, but she knew his family cared deeply about appearances and propriety. When she finally told him later that evening, Sameer was silent at first. He smiled faintly and assured her everything would be fine, but she sensed unease behind his calm words. He promised they would keep it quiet until after the wedding, when he could talk to his mother privately. Meera agreed, trusting him completely. What she didn't know was that the secret was no longer theirs to keep. Layla Al-Mansoor had already heard whispers. One of her servants, loyal to her and curious by nature, had overheard Meera's private phone call to a friend back in India, during which she mentioned being late and feeling scared. Layla's suspicion deepened instantly. In her world, such a secret before marriage was a stain that no wealth could cleanse. To her, Meera was a manipulative woman who had deliberately trapped her son with the promise of a child. The thought made Layla's blood boil. She believed Meera wanted the Al-Mansoor fortune more than her son's love, and Layla had spent her entire life ensuring no one ever humiliated her family name. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of activity, and Meera noticed Layla's sudden distance. The older woman rarely spoke to her, yet Meera sensed a quiet hostility behind her polite smile. Still, she ignored it, telling herself that things would soften after the wedding. Layla, meanwhile, was planning something darker. She spent hours on the phone with someone who owed her favors, an old acquaintance with access to restricted substances. To anyone watching, she seemed like a busy mother managing last-minute wedding details. No one could have guessed that she was orchestrating a silent revenge. On the day of the wedding reception, the ballroom sparkled with gold lights, laughter, and music. Meera looked radiant, glowing from within, unaware of the danger surrounding her. Guests filled the room, toasting the couple's happiness. The bride and groom moved from table to table, thanking everyone for coming, their smiles never fading. Layla appeared composed, complimenting Meera's beauty, even hugging her warmly for the cameras. But her mind was focused entirely on one detail, the wedding toast. She had instructed the head waiter to let her handle the special drinks for the couple's first toast, claiming she wanted to make it personal. Moments before the toast, she quietly poured the contents of a tiny vial into one of the glasses. It dissolved instantly, colorless and odorless. Layla smiled softly as she handed the glasses to the waiter, who carried them to the couple. Meera raised her glass, unaware that her fate had already been sealed. As the night carried on, Layla watched with a calm that masked her satisfaction. Every laugh Meera shared, every sparkle in her eyes, felt like an insult to her pride. She told herself it wasn't murder, it was justice. In her mind, she was protecting her son and their family's legacy from a woman who dared to bring shame upon them. The poison would be quick, quiet, and untraceable. No one would suspect her, not in the middle of such celebration. When the music swelled and the crowd cheered for the couple, Layla allowed herself a rare smile. The deed was done. The secret she believed would ruin everything was about to disappear forever. And as Meera's laughter echoed through the hall, Layla thought it was the last time she would ever have to hear that sound. The wedding reception reached its most joyous moment as the music grew louder and the guests flooded the dance floor. Meera and Sameer were surrounded by smiling faces, flashing cameras, and endless congratulations. The air was filled with perfume, laughter, and the shimmer of expensive jewelry reflecting the golden light. To everyone watching, it looked like the perfect celebration, a fairy tale ending for two people from different worlds who had found love against the odds. But as the band played their final song before the couple's dance, Meera began to feel strange. At first, it was only a faint dizziness, like the room was spinning too slowly. She thought it was exhaustion, or the champagne, maybe even nerves. She smiled at her guests, pretending everything was fine, but the sensation grew worse. The lights blurred, the sound of laughter became distant, and her stomach twisted painfully. She felt her pulse race, her throat dry up, and her vision dim around the edges. Sameer noticed her unease and gently placed a hand on her back, but before he could say anything, Meera stumbled. Her glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The crowd gasped. Within seconds, Meera collapsed. Her body convulsed violently, her eyes wide with panic as she struggled to breathe. Guests screamed and rushed to help. Sameer knelt beside her, calling for medical aid while his hands shook uncontrollably. The music stopped abruptly, replaced by chaos. Some guests thought it was a fainting spell, others whispered about food poisoning. The hotel's emergency team was called immediately, and paramedics arrived within minutes. Layla stood among the crowd, her face pale but expressionless. She watched the scene unfold, her eyes following Meera's limp form as it was lifted onto a stretcher. For a moment, guilt flickered somewhere deep within her, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She told herself this was destiny, that the girl's own deceit had brought this upon her. When the paramedics wheeled Meera out of the hall, Layla turned away, whispering something softly under her breath that no one heard. At the hospital, doctors rushed to stabilize Meera. Sameer stayed by her side, his heart pounding with fear. He couldn't understand what had gone wrong. Only hours ago, she had been laughing and dancing. Now she lay unconscious, her skin cold, her breathing shallow. The medical team ran multiple tests, struggling to identify the cause. Her symptoms didn't match simple food poisoning. The doctors noticed her pupils were constricted, her heartbeat irregular. One of them quietly mentioned the possibility of poisoning. Sameer's mind froze when he heard the word. He didn't know what to think or who to blame. Layla arrived at the hospital soon after, playing the role of a devastated mother. She comforted her son, insisting everything would be fine, though her tone carried a calm that didn't fit the panic of the moment. Nurses moved quickly through the corridors, their faces tight with concern. Hours passed with no improvement. Meera's organs began to fail one by one, and despite every attempt to revive her, her body gave up before dawn. When the doctor finally emerged to deliver the news, Sameer collapsed into silence. His new wife, the woman he had promised a lifetime to, was gone before the first sunrise of their marriage. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but whispers spread quickly among the hospital staff. The symptoms were too unusual. The decline to sudden. One nurse noted the faint smell of almonds near Meera's lips, a small but chilling detail. As the body was prepared for release, the hospital administration quietly contacted the authorities to investigate further. Sameer didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. The tragedy that had shattered his life would soon unravel into a web of deceit, pride, and revenge. And among those who mourned Meera's death that morning, one person walked away calm, certain that the secret she had buried would never be uncovered. The next morning, Dubai's glittering social scene woke to shocking news. Headlines flooded WhatsApp groups, tabloids, and news channels. Indian bride dies mysteriously after a lavish Dubai wedding. What was meant to be the city's grandest celebration had turned into a chilling tragedy. Sameer hadn't slept since Meera's death. He sat in the hospital corridor, numb and hollow, trying to make sense of what had happened. Reporters camped outside the hospital, eager to capture every detail of the scandal that was beginning to unfold. The hospital's report on Meera's sudden collapse caught the attention of the Dubai police. The attending doctor had flagged inconsistencies that didn't align with natural cardiac arrest. Toxicology tests were ordered quietly, and within days, the results confirmed traces of cyanide in Meera's bloodstream. The discovery changed everything. What had looked like a medical emergency was now a homicide investigation. Detectives were assigned to the case, and the Al-Mansoor family found themselves under scrutiny. Officers interviewed guests, staff, and the hotel's management. They reviewed surveillance footage from the wedding reception, examining every detail. The cameras captured Layla several times near the drinks table before the toast, rearranging glasses and speaking briefly to a waiter. At first, it didn't seem unusual. She was, after all, the groom's mother. But when a waiter admitted she had personally instructed him to hand the couple their drinks, suspicion grew. Her behavior that night, calm and composed amid chaos, stood out even more in hindsight. Meanwhile, Sameer was drowning in grief. He replayed the night over and over, trying to remember if Meera had eaten or drunk anything different. The idea of poison seemed impossible. He had always believed his mother would protect him, not bring harm to his happiness. Yet something inside him began to ache with unease when he remembered the way Layla had stood motionless as the doctors tried to save Meera. She hadn't cried, she hadn't panicked, she had only watched. The police requested access to Layla's phone records and bank statements. What they found deepened the mystery. 2 weeks before the wedding, Layla had transferred money to an individual known to supply restricted chemicals. When questioned, she dismissed it as a business transaction but couldn't provide receipts or proof. Detectives also found a set of gloves and an empty vial in her bathroom trash, which matched the chemical composition of the poison detected in Meera's system. Word of the investigation spread rapidly, and soon the case became front-page news across both Dubai and India. The once admired Al-Mansoor family was now surrounded by scandal. The idea that a mother might have poisoned her son's bride shocked everyone. Layla's lawyers worked frantically to protect her reputation, calling the accusations baseless. But the evidence was too strong to ignore. As pressure mounted, Layla's composure began to crack. In private, she grew irritable and defensive. She told herself she had done nothing wrong, that it was Meera who had crossed boundaries by deceiving her family. But even as she repeated that lie, she began to sense that her perfect world was crumbling. Her social circle turned cold. Business partners distanced themselves. The Al-Mansoor name, once associated with power and prestige, was now whispered with disgust. Sameer, torn between loyalty and disbelief, agreed to cooperate with investigators. He handed over the guest list, receipts, and personal notes from the wedding. It broke him to imagine his mother's involvement, but deep down, the pieces fit too perfectly to ignore. The night before Meera died, Layla had insisted on taking care of the toast herself, smiling as if nothing could go wrong. Now that memory haunted him endlessly. After weeks of gathering evidence, the police had enough to move forward. Layla was brought in for questioning under suspicion of premeditated murder. Cameras flashed as she was escorted into the station, her face hidden behind dark glasses. For the first time, the elegant woman who had ruled Dubai's social circles looked powerless. Behind the walls of the interrogation room, she faced detectives determined to expose the truth. The investigation had started as a mystery about a sudden death at a wedding, but it was now something far darker, a story of pride, deception, and revenge. And as the evidence unfolded, one question hung in the air. How far could a mother go to protect her family's image, even if it meant destroying it forever? Layla sat across from the detectives in the cold, sterile interrogation room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For hours, she maintained her composure, answering questions in short, clipped sentences. She denied any involvement in Meera's death and claimed that her family was being targeted by jealous outsiders. but the investigators were patient. They showed her the toxicology report, the surveillance footage, and the statement from the waiter who had served the poison drink. Each piece of evidence chipped away at the image she had built. The calm mask she had worn for decades began to crack. The lead investigator placed a small vial on the table, the same one found in her bathroom bin. Layla's eyes flickered for a moment, the only sign of emotion she had shown in hours. The silence in the room grew heavier. She tried to claim it was used for cleaning chemicals, but the forensic results proved otherwise. The liquid traces inside matched the cyanide found in Meera's system. When confronted with her phone records and the bank transfer to the chemical supplier, Layla's voice faltered for the first time. Her breathing became shallow, and her fingers trembled slightly. After nearly 6 hours of questioning, she finally spoke in a low, trembling voice. She didn't deny what she had done, but she tried to soften it, insisting she hadn't meant to kill Meera. She said she only wanted to frighten her to make her leave Sameer before the marriage became official. In her mind, she had convinced herself that Meera was deceitful, that she had trapped her son with the pregnancy, and threatened the family's reputation. Layla described how she believed the poison would only make Meera sick, forcing her to withdraw and avoid scandal, but the investigators saw through the excuse. The dose used was far too high to be anything less than intentional. When Sameer heard that his mother had confessed, his world fell apart. The woman who had raised him, who had always preached honor and respect, had taken away the person he loved most. He refused to visit her in custody, sending a message through his lawyer that he wanted nothing more to do with her. The press followed every development closely. Newspapers across Dubai and India ran headlines describing the wedding poison case, and social media was flooded with speculation. The story became a symbol of greed, pride, and misplaced control, a family destroyed by its own obsession with image. The trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed every day, filled with journalists, onlookers, and people who had once been part of Layla's social circle. She appeared in court impeccably dressed, her expression calm but distant. The prosecution presented a clear timeline. The purchase of the poison, her movements during the reception, and her deliberate handling of the toast. The waiter's testimony was damning, describing her insistence that no one else served the couple's glasses. Forensic experts confirmed that the fingerprints on Meera's glass matched Layla's perfectly. When the defense tried to argue that the act was unintentional, the judge interrupted sharply. The evidence showed careful planning and execution. Layla's attempts to protect her family's image had not only destroyed it, but also taken an innocent life. Sameer sat in the back of the courtroom, silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't look at his mother once. After weeks of arguments and testimonies, the verdict was delivered. Layla Al-Mansoor was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The courtroom fell silent as the decision was read. She stood still, her face pale but expressionless. There were no tears, no outburst, just a quiet acceptance that everything she had built was gone. The Al-Mansoor empire began to crumble soon after. Business partners withdrew, properties were sold off, and the once proud family name became a reminder of betrayal and tragedy. When the trial ended, Sameer left the courthouse without speaking to anyone. He walked past the flashing cameras, ignoring the reporters calling his name. In that moment, he wasn't the heir to a wealthy empire, or the groom from a glamorous wedding. He was just a man who had lost everything to the very person who was supposed to protect him. Years passed, but the shadow of that wedding night never faded. Dubai had moved on to new scandals, new faces, and new stories. But for Sameer Al-Mansoor, time seemed frozen on the night Meera took her last breath. He sold most of his family's holdings, left the country quietly, and settled in a small coastal town in southern Spain, where no one recognized his name. The lavish life he once lived became a memory he tried to erase. His mansion in Dubai stood empty for years, its grand hall still holding the echo of laughter, music, and the moment when joy turned to horror. Every year, on what would have been their wedding anniversary, Sameer returned to the sea. He would walk along the quiet shoreline carrying a bouquet of white lilies, Meera's favorite flowers. Locals saw him as a quiet, solitary man, never realizing that behind his calm expression lived a storm of guilt and sorrow. He blamed himself for not protecting her, for trusting too blindly, for never seeing the darkness growing inside his own family. He often replayed their last evening together in his mind, her laughter, her warmth, her joy, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so fast. In prison, Layla Al-Mansoor lived a life stripped of privilege. The woman who once commanded respect and fear in Dubai's elite circles now shared a cell with strangers who cared nothing for her name or wealth. She refused to speak to the press or give interviews. Her silence became her only form of control. Rumors spread that she spent her days reading the Quran, avoiding contact with other inmates, and staring at the wall for hours at a time. She never wrote to Sameer, and he never reached out to her. Their relationship ended the moment the verdict was announced. As the years passed, Layla's health began to decline. The isolation and guilt consumed her. She never admitted full remorse, but guards often caught her muttering Meera's name under her breath. One night, she collapsed in her cell and was taken to a government hospital where she remained under supervision. When word of her illness reached Sameer, he felt nothing, not anger, not pity, only emptiness. He didn't attend her funeral when she died months later. Her burial was attended by 2 distant relatives and a lawyer. No reporters, no flowers, no legacy. Her name was carved into a small, unmarked grave in the outskirts of Dubai, where the desert wind erased her footprints as if she had never existed. Meera's parents in Mumbai had received their daughter's ashes long ago. They had built a small shrine for her in their home, lighting a lamp every evening in her memory. For them, the pain never dulled, but justice brought them some peace. They refused any money from the Al-Mansoor family, instead dedicating their lives to helping women trapped in abusive or controlling relationships. Meera's story became a quiet warning whispered among communities about love, trust, and the danger of pride disguised as protection. In the years that followed, Meera's death remained one of Dubai's most haunting true crime cases. Documentaries, books, and online discussions retold her story, each version uncovering new angles of the tragedy. Some focused on the wealth and glamour, others on the psychology of obsession and control. But the essence remained the same, a young woman who walked into a palace believing in love and left it only as a memory. Sameer never remarried. He lived out his days in solitude, designing buildings for small local clients, preferring simplicity over grandeur. He kept one photograph on his desk, a picture from the wedding, taken just minutes before the toast. Meera's face glowed with happiness, unaware of the poison in her glass. He often stared at that photo for hours, lost between memory and grief. Every year, when he returned to the sea with his bouquet, he would whisper her name to the wind and watch the waves carry the flowers away. To the world, the story had become another headline. But to him, it was an endless punishment, a reminder that the people we love most can sometimes be destroyed by the ones we trust completely.